FreshPod is created for industry professionals and is intended for educational purposes only. This content is not designed for patients or consumers.
The joy of a technology career is getting to see a lot of different things. And I think working with nurses and seeing what their workflow is like and understanding that success isn't them spending a lot of time in our app, it's actually them spending as little time as can make them effective is a key learning.
Welcome to FreshPod, a supportive podcast community from Fresh Clinics, created especially for healthcare practitioners and clinic owners. I'm McGlynn, and as always, I'm joined by Fresh Clinics co-founder, Dr. John Delaney.
Hey Loz, hi everyone. Today's episode is a little different, but such an important one.
Because we're talking about something that every single one of our members uses, but probably doesn't fully see, the Fresh app, or what people think is just an app.
Exactly, because from the outside it looks simple, but behind the scenes it's powering compliance, medical oversight, patient safety, documentation, and a huge amount of infrastructure that most clinics would otherwise have to figure out on their own.
So today is really about pulling back the curtain, why Fresh exists, what problems it's actually solved and still solves, and what it really takes to build something like this in healthcare.
And we've brought in two of the brains behind it. We've got our Chief Technology Officer, David Bolton, who spent his career building and scaling tech from startups through to major platforms like Woolworths, Domain, and Westfield. And Dave McPherson, who leads engineering here at Fresh, working closely with the team to bring the platform to life day to day. Between them, they've worked across some of the biggest and most complex tech environments in Australia, and now they're applying that experience to healthcare, which is a very different landscape.
And that's exactly what we're unpacking today, because this isn't just about features, it's about understanding what's actually happening behind the scenes to keep your clinic running safely, compliantly, and efficiently. Let's get into it. JD, I want to actually start with you to kick off this episode.
Yeah.
Because this is a cool one, but
Cool people talking about cool things.
it is. It absolutely is. When we think about the Fresh app, and we were sort of having a conversation just before we officially started recording, what problem were you and JH trying to solve when you decided, I think we're going to build an app?
Well, it's a great question. And it is often the best problem solving just comes from that necessity of like, I've got a burning issue and I need to solve it really quickly. And the burning issue for us was John and I didn't want to have to handwrite compliant paperwork. And both of us thought there must be a better way, not because we were lazy, although sometimes doctors can be accused of focusing on efficiency to such a point that it can be perceived as laziness, but we were both working full time. And we were doing, when Fresh started, we were facilitating these nurses working with these patients, and calls were coming through to us. And we were like, I don't want to have to generate this myself all the time. So we worked late nights to put together a system that would do that. And the system itself was really well received by the nurses with whom we were working at the start. And they said to us, hey, this works really well. Can I use it in my clinic? Can I recommend it to friends? And so on. And John and I didn't know, but we'd stumbled onto what the Silicon Valley types call product market fit, where the product we made really fit with the need of the market. And we were solving our own problem, but in doing so, solved a problem for a lot of other people. It didn't take long before we realized that that technology solving the problems for the clinics was a really, a great advantage for Fresh and a great advantage for our members. And so we doubled down on that, and we invested in an agency to help us make an app. And that was our first kind of introduction to building technology. And we've learned a hell of a lot along the way, but we as we continue to grow and the needs of our members continue to grow and change, it became apparent that we needed technologists and people whose whole sole career is building and solving solutions for people using technology to join the team. And so we so that that brings us to Dave and Dave, the Daves. John and I are sometimes referred to as the Johns, and we've got the Daves with us. So Dave Bolton, Dave McPherson, it's lovely to have you guys with us. Thank you for joining.
Great to be here.
Guys, you both come from a pedigree of big and small companies, significant technology infrastructures, then to a company like ours, which was, had a non-traditional route of technology and maybe had a bunch of stuff that had been built over the time that needed people with expertise to come in and look at it and tool it. I guess for our audience to begin with, when there's a technology team, what does that mean? Like Dave, your CTO, Dave Bolton, your CTO, and Dave McPherson, your head of engineering, what do those roles mean? Like, what do you look after? And then how does that apply to Fresh? What do you guys do when you're part of the team?
That's great. Well, firstly, CTO, my background is I've focused on technology, and the pleasure of a technology career is that you get to see a whole bunch of different stuff in different contexts, and you apply your expertise to the problems in that space. And so, day to day for me, I'm looking at, well, where is the organization? What do our customers desperately need from us? Are we delivering on that promise? And what would it take to be even better? So I spend a lot of time thinking about customers. I spend a lot of time working with the technology team like Dave, his team, product design, and we focus on the problems of our customers and how we make their lives easier, which adds value to their businesses and adds value to our business.
Just remind for the listeners again, because I think a lot of people might think of technology teams as just all being coders, all just being people in front of code. Like, what does product mean? Design, I guess most people could understand, but like, what's it mean? What's product mean? What's that mean?
So to end up with the Fresh app, which our customers use and they get so much value out of, compliance, all these other parts, there's a lot of thinking that needs to go into it. You obviously have to build it, and that means people have been writing code that exists on your phone, on your iPad to run that. But it's not just writing code. There's actually a lot of discipline that goes into figuring out what's the right thing to build, what should it look like, what's a frictionless way of getting that in front of the customers so that it's easy for them to do their job. And when you've got a really, really good team, their ability to distill what the customer needs down to a simple, easy to use app is what sets them apart from just someone who's having a go at it and trying to make something work.
Yeah. Because I know like a lot of people's experience with apps would be based on their familiarity with, say, Instagram, right? Which is a multi-billion-dollar app and, very high technology standards and a big technology team. And for a smaller company to try to emulate that takes a lot of people working really hard and trying to make good decisions along the way. So Dave, I'm going to call you Macca because it's easier. Macca and Bolt. So Macca, you're a coder per se, but what does that mean? Are you like laptop open coding all day, or like how does your day work, and how are you contributing to that end user experience when they open the app?
Yeah, so I get that kind of fun part of taking kind of that broad remit that Bolts is sort of looking after, and engineering is then kind of a little bit closer to what a lot of people have in their minds when they think of those tech teams of the coders. But further to that, it's all well and good to have a bunch of coders, but how do you let them know the things that you need to build, and how do you direct them towards those things that you need done in that repeatable way, right? So quality is not like one thing that happens to be good. It's like, how do you do it again and again and again and again? And so that's the bit that sort of we wrap over as the engineering organization here.
Yeah, and engineering is not just a euphemism. Like engineers in the physical society are problem solving. How do I cross a chasm here? I'm going to build a bridge. How do I build it? A lot of mathematics and a lot of structured problem solving. And similarly in software, it's not too different, right? You're building structures, but in code form in the digital space. Is that fair assessment?
Yeah, absolutely. Like you could sit down and go, oh, I can cross that chasm, myself and scramble over the rocks. But how do I get everyone in the village and that village to connect and be able to do that really easily and safely? And then you might start layering up things like, all of the weather, and so you sort of go from there. And you can see, you can go, I could build a big shiny bridge that can take tanks, or like it's just a little one that we can, walk across more easily.
Yeah, and then all of those decisions along the way.
Exactly that, yeah.
It's interesting. When I joined Fresh, I had come from the industry knowing Fresh and working with members who were a part of Fresh and really loved it. There were people who were operating before the app existed. And I tell you what, they have a deep appreciation for what is available to them now. But what I learned when I joined, some of your team members took us through, some of the things that are implemented. And even for me, I think making things easier when people don't realize that it's easy, and even down to how one of your team members, Luca, showed how they introduced the ability just to even search addresses and for it to pre-populate. Like, that doesn't just happen. That takes a lot of thought. The way things look and feel, and people know when things don't work, but they don't recognize when they do. Um, for you guys joining Fresh more recently, with there's also a big team behind you guys. What really stood out to you both about the platform, and I guess Fresh as a business, considering you have both worked in so many different areas of this space? Bolton?
Yeah. So, firstly, we've got a history of doing technology that I say is like an invisible hand helping our customers. So, the goal is it should make it easier for them to do their job, and it should make it easier for them to be compliant, which in our industry I've learned is very, very important. And it's taken a lot of focus, but we deliver on that. Then when you look forward, you think about, well, now to JD's point before, people have the experience of Instagram and Uber and things like that. How do we reach that level of frictionless? Of it's just easy. I know exactly what to do. It's getting out of my way, and like I said, becomes this invisible partner in the business. So I think a lot about that, and I guess a lot of our team is focused on the way we make things easy behind the scenes too. And you're right, there's a lot of effort that goes into even just an address search. Our technology is constantly improving, and I believe that we are going to be able to rapidly increase the value that we're delivering for our customers, so they can focus on what they need to do, which is their customers, and staying compliant as well.
It's interesting that point you make around software helping people to help their patients and stay in the room. It's a point that actually John Holbrook identifies a lot, is as opposed to some other apps, Instagram's a good example, where the purpose of the app is to keep you using the app as much as possible. The purpose of our app is actually to get you out of it as quickly as possible and back with the patient. And it's a big focus of ours. And it's probably not a question, more of a statement around us understanding that as an organization. And I know you guys drive really hard on that, but that's some of the thought work that we have to put into learning what members want, knowing what members want, and working really hard to achieve that, rather than some external goal from best practice in another part of technology. It's different. What we do is different. Healthcare is different.
Like I said, the joy of a technology career is getting to see a lot of different things. And I think working with nurses and seeing what their workflow is like, and understanding that success isn't them spending a lot of time in our app, it's actually them spending as little time as can make them effective, is a key learning.
Looking at your phone, Fresh Clinics looks like just another app. But in reality, it's an entire clinical and operational system sitting underneath your business. From prescribing and medical oversight to documentation, compliance workflows, and patient records, there's a huge amount happening behind the scenes to make sure that everything is done properly. And building that in healthcare isn't simple. It requires constant updates, alignment with regulation, and a big team of total legends working every day to keep things running safely and securely. That's what Fresh Clinics is here to do, to take that complexity off your plate so that you can focus on your patients, knowing that the foundations of your business are set up right. So if you've ever thought it's just an app, head to freshclinics.com.au and take a closer look. Because alongside the app is also an entire ecosystem of support for you, for your business, and most importantly, for your patients.
And Mecca, maybe one for you. So for the uninitiated user, maybe they'll have their iPhone, or they'll have an iPad or whatever. We don't have it on Android yet. the user will see an app, and that's their experience, right? They open the app and they use it to help facilitate their treatments and be compliant and so on and so on. When you think about the system, though, you see a lot more. Do you mind just, I mean, obviously it's a non-technical audience, including me. Do you mind giving me a bit of an idea of the scope of, like, for us to serve that up, what's the infrastructure around that? What are the different parts of that ecosystem that are invisible, deliberately invisible, but are actually there doing a lot of heavy lifting in the background?
Yeah, it's always tricky to talk about things, particularly like software is this intangible kind of invisible thing, and so it feels quite funny. We're often drawing these analogies back to the physical world, but sometimes an easy one is just your house. You know, you sit there and you've got foundations, and there's plumbing that comes in, and electricity that all comes in, and you just rock up and you want to turn on a faucet and have some water flow out of it, and that's kind of what we do, and that's how the apps are there. But there is a lot of work that gets that translates things from regulation and compliance to storing things in a safe way for those nurses, to connecting them through to those doctors and making sure that those phone calls are connecting and are recorded in ways that they don't have to kind of worry about and do. And my older sister is a nurse, and I know anything that you can do that gets out of their way so that they can spend their focus on the patient is what they need. And I think a lot of people in the medical community have bumped into tech that kind of is the antithesis of that. It gets in your way. And that invisible hand is that thing that we want to keep, coming back to. I want you to turn on hot water and get hot water. And then beyond that, I want you to go into your bathroom and have an incredible experience in a shower that you didn't know that you wanted. It's kind of that view. Like, that's where that coming together of technology is really kind of fun. And seeing that experience of customers, of nurses, and then their patients on top of it, having that experience is kind of the joy that we get. But I hope that gives like a bit of a flavor of
Yeah,
it.
no, that's a really good framing for it. And the app usage, like something like those telehealth calls, the video connection on the telehealth calls. It's how quickly you get used to technology, right? Like, that's magic. You sit in your clinic and press a button, and there's someone, and it serves up. Not only does it connect the video call, which is great, like you can do that on FaceTime. It's not compliant, but you can do it. But it serves up in that call the name of the doctor and the doctor's qualifications to meet the APRA requirements. Serves that up. That's hot water out of the tap
Yeah.
that you didn't even know you needed, right? But by layering that compliance infrastructure in a seamless and invisible way into these magical technology features that we already have, we're building together this uniquely aligned tool for the industry to keep delivering really good care and make delivering care easy and safe and compliant.
Yeah, and that little thing of what maybe even the nurses don't see, but patients certainly won't see, but that kind of background information that the doctor has then available for them as well. So, layering, I really like that framing of layering that compliance up, and just that invisible hand again, that's just dropping in all these little places and just saying, hey, you don't have to kind of worry about that. And I think that's the joy of technology. It's like you go right back in time, and we had fire, and we do all these different things, and we just layer these little things up, and then eventually I have a washing machine, and you're like, that's fantastic.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, and not till it breaks, you realize, you're like, oh my God, this is life is terrible without
That's
this,
right. I did not realize that washing clothes was this much hard yakka. That's right.
Yeah, I'm just imagining you banging your shirts out on a rock maca.
I want to say just Dave, but like, it's like, who is that too? Um, Dave Volt. I want to say DB and DM, but
That's
that's just
fine.
like
You can run that.
DB. We throw around names around here. Um, how is building something in healthcare, like even aesthetics, like is there a difference? But how is that different to building, a standard, say, tech platform?
So I've been in a whole bunch of different industries. I think one of the most interesting parts about this is that healthcare around the world, there's a lot of standards involved with data, and even just outside of technology, there's just standards and compliance. So there's a lot of things that if you're not paying attention to them, you can be not compliant, or you could be making things harder. So, when we look at our platform, we're like, okay, what are the global standards? How does this hang together? What are people required to do as part of their jobs, and how does that factor into the technology that supports them? That's been a really interesting learning for me. We've had some opportunities to look at how aligning with those sort of things is going to give us the ability to also just deliver better experiences in future as well, because we're doing things the way that it's defined. Either you have to, or if you do it this way, it'll be easier to integrate with another system.
We were just talking about this before. When you looked to do this 8 years ago, JD, the regulatory landscape was very different to what it is now, as is the technology landscape. If someone tried to operate with no form of support to the degree that Fresh sort of offers, what would that look like? Like, if we were going back to, like, you were talking about paper documentation and stuff, is that even possible today? Like, genuine
I mean,
question.
I think it'd be very difficult to be compliant.
Yeah,
If you're
interesting.
operating a clinic in the fashion of those that we support, it'd be very difficult to meet compliance standards. And I think historically, there were grey areas around that weren't being adequately supported or weren't being adequately addressed by the industry. The industry's grown, and as any industry grows, it becomes more important that it is able to self-govern. And I think we're getting better at that, and technology is playing a really big role in it. How do you guys feel about the multi-dimensional variation of compliance and regulation and technology? And, AI, we're going to talk about it because it's a tech conversation. Aesthetics, cosmetics, where Fresh lives, is a fast-growing industry. And in a fast-growing industry, regulation sometimes struggles to keep up with the industry, and there is a lot of reliance on good self-governance, ethical players doing ethical things and setting up the right infrastructure, and often then regulations and guidelines follow the steps of the good actors in the organization. And if we think cosmetics or aesthetics is moving fast, gosh, look at AI, right? How do you guys think about future-proofing or bulletproofing compliance in a space that is moving so quickly, both from, again, MedReg, but also AI and privacy and security in that space, and so on and so on? Do you have thoughts on how you stay ahead of that?
It's one of those funny things that it's about. Technology is often just about helping you to do things a little bit smoother, or a little bit faster, or a little bit, broader reach. For example, telehealth suddenly allows a doctor to serve a patient across a different, a larger area than just someone who's able to walk into their clinic. And similarly with compliance, I've got this kind of story from a previous world where we were doing financial systems, but they'd baked in that they didn't move money between two different banks at 4 p.m. And the reason was literally that tellers knocked off work at 4 p.m. And so the systems just didn't do that. And then technology came along and said, actually, time doesn't matter. It can move between at any time. And all of these like surrounding systems kind of had to shift and go with it. And I think that's a fairly tangible like example of what happens. There's an uptick in technology. It changes one part of it, and then there's a ripple effect across the rest of the system, because everything is kind of integrated and interrelated. Because at the end of the day, everything that we make is about helping humans do things, turn a tap on, quite literally. So that tends to be how I look at it. And again, AI is another step change in speeding things along. There's ways that it can unlock things, and then there's also, you can just go really, really fast and run into that 4 p.m. stop, but you can do it really quickly. So it's often being, aware of that kind of whole, I think, is the thing to be considering when you do these different aspects. Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's an aspect where AI will enable so many people in the world generally, but it will enable people to do bad things badly more quickly,
Yep.
or good things well more quickly as well. And when it comes to compliance and data and security, you really need to understand what you want to do before you start trying to apply AI. Because I could imagine a world where a uninformed or not sophisticated player could end up doing some bad things with data and security. And in our world, that would be really bad. Luckily, we've got terrific talent who thinks about that every day, who've got great experience managing data, security, and looking after our customers. So I'm not worried about that. For me, I look at AI and I'm like, okay, we've got the right foundations, and now we can move quickly to helping our customers.
It does from time to time. I mean, I'm a big advocate of AI, and we're using it a lot to help improve our business and the members' experience. But it does at times feel like a solution in search of a problem. And I see this in the clinical aesthetic space around. This isn't to call out anything in particular, but say an AI agent to answer the phone for you. Sounds great. I don't have to answer the phone anymore. But there's been studies that have come out that show that will cause a lower level of satisfaction for your members than just having an answering machine or whatever, right? So it's this dual speed of like, we've got to move fast, but also let's not accelerate into a hard brick wall and crash the car and so on, right? Trying to balance all that's not easy, and I know you guys think about that a lot.
Well, our industry as well is built on human contact, right? There's people interacting with other people, and we don't want to be doing things to abstract that. In fact, just like we spoke about before, the less technology gets in the way of the human contact, the better. So when I think about applications of AI, it's not going to be how do we reduce your contact with your customer, because that's what keeps them coming back. That's the engagement part. And there's lots of other applications of it, but say answering the phones, maybe there's potential there, but I know I like talking to a person. I don't like sitting on hold waiting to talk to a person. And if it speeds that up, great. But if I can get in touch with a person and have a real human experience with that, then that for me is preferable. And I imagine it's the same for our customers too.
When you talked before around, we're in this space of AI and, things moving really quickly, um, bad people can do bad things and good people can do good things, but also some people might think that because AI is available, they can create things really seamlessly. And there's other platforms available. We've certainly heard, you know, people going, "Oh, I'll just build an app." Like, that sounds really easy. When we talk about the Fresh app, can you give our members and people listening a sense of what actually goes on behind the scenes? What does it take? When we talk about your teams and systems, what does that actually sort of look like in the background?
When we start with how do you apply technology in a way that's useful, you always have to start with the customer. So the first port of call is tell me what your day is like. Tell me what's frustrating you. Give me an insight. Let me see what's happening. Okay, what about if we did this for you? What about if we did that? So that is where all good technology starts, and that's why it's hard to necessarily say, look, building something in a weekend is going to be successful, because the insight there is maybe you understand, but maybe you just understand it from your perspective. Actually, there is work to go and talk to people and figure it out. To answer the question, always starts with the customer and always starts with an interaction and a sequence or a succession of interactions to zero in on, okay, what would actually be helpful, as opposed to let's just build you something.
Yeah, you don't want to be adding in additional friction, for nurses to be engaged with their patients and anyone really, the doctors or anyone to get the treatment or the outcomes that they kind of need. I'm sure everyone's heard stories of like, oh, I'll stick an iPad in a room and you can go in and talk to the iPad and I'll wrap it over the top of Google. And you're like, you're not going to get a good, outcome from that. And I think similarly as well, if you're not able to come together and say, what are all the different aspects that are needed to get out of the way so that the nurse can be actually engaged with their patient and deeply involved in that treatment, what their needs are, what are they really looking for, and finding ways to smooth that right out. It's a little bit of a joke about AI at the moment, but I want AI to vacuum my room. I don't want it to write terrible poetry for me. That's just slowing things down, and I think it's similar to that. That like relenting focus on what do you need, what is making your life easier, and not sort of getting sidetracked by that. I think that's
I like the word
critical piece.
focus there.
Yeah.
Because focus implies both a concentration on the the right things, but also an ability to deprioritize, because we all know in our own lives and also when we speak to members, there's an endless list of things that could be optimized, improved, changed. Yeah, my life would be better if XYZ thing was improved. Some of our responsibility and our task and our challenge is to identify what are the top 3 things, 5 things, whatever it is, that we can work on and get right, that'll make a really big impact, and then moving on to the next things. And I think that's sometimes lost when people who aren't involved in technology might sit and review, say, the Fresh app, and you'd say, why can't they just, X? Why can't we just Y? And some of that reason is that there's always an opportunity cost of attention. Where do we put attention and focus? And I don't know if you want to speak on that a little bit. Is that challenging in this environment more than others, or about the same, or where do you land on that?
Well, look, we talked about, one of the functions as CTO, one of the functions I'm responsible for is the idea of product, right? Now, product, what does that mean? Like for some people, when you hear the word product, you think about a physical product. What we mean in the technology world is it's a mindset of saying the app or something that we're giving to customers is a product. It's a thing that they're experiencing, just like a book is a product, or something I buy at the supermarket's a product. So that person, their job as a product person is to be thinking about how are people going to experience this, and how am I going to, I guess coming back to that frictionless and invisible thing, how am I going to help it accommodate what they need to achieve with this? We talk about the idea of jobs to be done. People don't pick up the Fresh app because I really want to play with the Fresh app. They've got a job to be done, which is I need to run at a compliant appointment right now. I need to do that easily. So a product person, which is where we start, we've got to understand the customer, and we have to apply that thinking to, well, what is the job to be done, and what is the product that we're creating for our customers? That I don't know if that's sort of the interesting angle there, but that for me is like, that's a really important part of technology. Even before you start building anything, that focus on what's the job to be done. Choosing between potentially a lot of jobs to be done. What's the one that could be most impactful, most useful? And often there's a trade-off. I think in future there'll be fewer trade-offs because we can get more done, but that's one of the key things.
Are the trade-offs always things that the end user can see? Or is it sometimes the case that you've got to do some tooling under the hood that the consumer might not see, the user member might not see, but actually it is improving life, the use of the app or the stability of the app or things like that? Do you mind commenting a little bit on that?
We would love to always just build shiny things that people can see, but for our industry with compliance, regulation, security, data, there are things where like, look, we're not going to do this shiny thing right now, because getting the fundamentals right is what is the promise we've made to customers. I'm very big on, we make a promise that we're going to support you in these ways, and that'll be on us. You shouldn't have to worry about that. But sometimes the trade-off is we're going to be focused on keeping our promise to you, which may mean less shiny things in the short term, but that's an important thing. You don't want to have to worry about that, and that's on us.
So to shiny things for a minute, if a member's sitting out there and they're thinking to themselves, I know what would make my life easier, but no one's ever asked me. How do we as an organization, how do we get feedback from members? How do we engage them and find out what's the best thing to build next? We do build shiny things as well, right? And that's an important part of making sure we're continuously improving the experience that members have. What's the process that we have here at Fresh to ensure that we're building not what's in our mind, but what's in their lives?
Yeah, just in industry generally, there's a really important concept called the voice of the customer. It's like in any particular decision-making process or any regular thing, you want to have the voice of the customer. And there's all sorts of different ways of doing it. I think it was Amazon had the idea of just an empty chair in important meetings, and just imagine the customer sitting in that chair. What would they say? But even better than imagining what the customer would say is just asking the customer. And with technology, there's more and more mechanisms. We do surveys of our customers. What was your experience on the e-commerce store? What was your experience doing this and that? And we look at those, and those things are surfaced so that anyone in the organisation can see. Oh, I see what the customer experience was today. It was good. It was bad. It could have been improved. There's a whole spectrum of feedback that we get, and then we synthesize that into, okay, well, what do they really need here? And that can be the tricky thing. Sometimes people will say, oh, I want this, but what they need is something different. Again, I come back to, that's the magic of a good product person. What's our product promise? What are we committing to deliver to our customers? And here's what they're asking for, but here's actually what they need. There's a bit of art in that.
We also do a number of different things internally. We've got a number of teams cross-functionally that we work with. We have marketing, we do a number of surveys. Your entire team, how many people are in your team?
Be up of 30.
So pretty big team. Some people might not realize there's a lot of people working in the background, a bit like Fresh as its entirety. But for someone that might not even know about the app or be using it, like JD, how would you explain in a nutshell, like, what is the app?
Well, that's a good question, Loz. Maybe we should have covered this at the start of the podcast, but it's a little Easter egg for those who've stayed. I've been saying recently, like, Fresh's mission is to make treating people easy and safe, and the technology assists us to do that. At the start, it was really basic, and it assisted to do that by, you would have a call with a doctor and it would generate a piece of paper that said you'd had that call with that doctor. And the evolution of it since then has been so that it has become an electronic medical record. So we talk about the front of house, middle of house, and back of house of any clinic. Front of house is, it's your point of sale system. It might be your calendar and booking software. It might be your rostering and scheduling software for your people. And then middle of house is when the patient comes into the clinic, how do you manage that interaction? And that includes, how do you record their medical history? How do you record the consent documentation? How do you call a authorized practitioner in a secure and compliant environment and get that paperwork that you need? How is the usage of medicine then recorded in a compliant way? And at the end of it all, how is that then communicated to the patient in the way that APRA deem necessary for compliance? Just a whole gamut of things, and there's other things all mixed in there. And then back of house is, how do you manage your inventory? How are restricted medicines placed in your clinic securely? How is documentation and audit trail of that sort of stuff covered? And also then, how does the usage of your inventory, how is that reported for you as a clinic owner or as the injector, so that you can know and track your progress and have some insights on your business and so on and so on. So the app as it is, it's both an app on your phone, but it's also what's known as a web app, which you can log into online and get a lot of information out of. That technology solution covers mostly the middle of house and the back of house of a clinic. So we don't do anything in the front of house yet. And that's one of those, quote unquote, shiny things that a lot of people have asked about, right? Why don't we do that? It's because we've been very deliberately focused on that promise that we make to the members, right? That Dave Bolton talked about, which is, if you're using us for your electronic medical record, managing that middle of house service, we're the best in the business for that. That's what we focus on. That's what we do. Now, down the track, maybe we go into front of house stuff. That's obviously something that people have asked about and that we've spoken about. But at the moment, we're focused on being absolutely the best we can in that area of promise that we make to members. And, part of that promise, part of that story to date has been, we've never charged for that software. That software is delivered to you to use in your clinic and get the maximum benefit you can out of. There's not a lock-in contract. There's not a monthly fee. We have a large team of technologists employed in the company that contribute to building that software. The build of it isn't free. I guarantee you that. We've invested a lot to make it really great. But what we recognize is that it is a vital cog of the clinic infrastructure. It's a vital piece of those clinics' ability to deliver care easily, safely, compliantly to patients. And so we make that a core promise to our members that we will provide the best experience we can for that part of their business. And so we continue to focus on how can we deliver really great value for our members? How can we continue to make that a really safe and compliant environment? And I don't know, Dave, if you want to um, chat a little bit about some of the stuff that we're thinking about in the future. Obviously, it's a pretty exciting time for technology, but to you, Dave Bolton, what are some of the things that are cooking that potentially some listeners can get a little bit excited about?
So when we look forward, we've been trialing some new technology we've worked very hard on in the US. So it's in a alpha program is what we call it. And that's
So what's that mean? What's alpha mean?
alpha means we're testing it with a small cohort of customers who are super interested in what we're doing and want to be involved. They're putting their hands up and saying,
And getting feedback from them and
exactly, like, give me a look at what's coming next. So I've been trialing with them and been getting some great feedback. A lot of it's been, hey, this is awesome. Some of it's like, oh, it would be better if it worked this way, which is something we're now able to really rapidly iterate on and make things work in a way that makes sense to our customers. And so that flexibility and rolling that out with some customers in the US and pretty imminently, in not too distant future, we'll be bringing that to Australia, is exciting. But when you're doing new technology as well, we do, as we've said several times, like we really care about the promise we make to customers, and it's important to get that technology right. And so when I look around, any sort of industry, and our industry is no different, you can see examples where people have just chased getting something in front of customers too quickly and they haven't got it right. Whereas when we talk about companies we admire, maybe like an Apple, they'll spend time to get something right. And when the iPhone came to market, it wasn't the first phone on market, it wasn't even the first smartphone on market, but it rapidly changed the industry because they'd got it right and they keep demonstrating that time and time again. That for us is the sort of thing that we think about is, well, we've got to get it right. We have to keep our promise. And when we deliver something, we want it to be a pleasurable experience. We don't want people to think, oh, I don't understand this, or this has made my job harder. We spend a lot of times saying, okay, it's got to be better for customers. It has to make their lives easier. It has to be, the invisible hand has to get even more invisible.
As I learned more about technology, there was a phrase that I enjoyed that is, "Don't make me think." And it's from the user's perspective that's the motto of the user is, don't make me think. It should just be. It should just, like, the button should be where I think it should be, and I should be able to push it and it should do what I think it should do. Don't make me have to work stuff out. I know software that I use that frustrates me is I'm like, I can't work out how this works. I have to go and read a tutorial or watch a video. You're kidding me? Like, it should just be simple and work in the way that I intend. Now that's a really selfish perspective that we've been coached by these amazing $100 billion companies that make software that's just so easy to use. But that's just what it is, right? So people are like, don't make me think, it should just work. And that takes a lot of pre-planning and a lot of investigation, a lot of trial and error to get something to that level of sophistication. And that's our ambition.
One of the roles in my team is user experience, and the classic book of user experience is called "Don't Make Me Think." So having someone on our team with that background who wakes up in the morning and is thinking around, well, how do we take the thinking out of this product is really key to landing things well. And I think if you look at the future of technology, one of the things that no one does now, but in the future we're well set up to, and other companies will be doing this too, is saying, well, how do we make it so John doesn't have to think for his use case, Lauren doesn't have to think for her use case, and you actually get a slightly different experience based on what you want to get done at that point in time. So we don't have static user interfaces anymore that I have to click this button in this place to get to the thing I want. It's more seamless. It's like, okay, right now I know that you want to do this thing based on the history of things that you've done before, whereas the history of things that you've done before might be different and you get a different experience. So I think that's going to be a very transformative.
A dynamic user experience based on what it knows about me. That's incredible. It's like the philosophy of design is radically evolving based on what's now possible. It's pretty cool.
Dave Mack, what excites you without giving too much away when you think about sort of the future direction of the app and the user experience?
Well, it's a lot of that stuff as well. So one of the reasons that you end up in tech and write software is you like taking, I guess, computers at a very basic level and going, how can we, use these? And one of the things that gives you a lot of joy is getting that in front of other people, and it's literally why we've ended up in these careers. There was a line from out of our function here, UX. And to that point, I don't think you need to be these billion-dollar companies anymore. Like that level of UX is kind of table stakes now, for any kind of a system that wants to be, useful and kind of real and have, a good engagement with their user base. So being able to do that and put that joy in front of those users and kind of um, that level of collaboration with UX and product and the tech is that sweet spot. It's that joy. It's kind of why we're all in tech, and getting that is a lot of fun, and we're getting that here, and we're starting to see that flow in, just even in our alpha testing, we're taking that feedback and we're turning things around, literally overnight, because the Americans are obviously off time zone to the Australian engineers, and so they get up again in the morning and they can see their feedback like reflected in the app, and that is cool. Like that kind of delight is amazing.
And that's revelatory in the context of your decades-long careers, right? That's never been able to be done before.
Yeah, well,
At a
incredibly hard to do, and it's starting to get a little bit easier. But also that's literally the work that we've been putting in over these last few months to get that kind of new foundational level, I suppose, that we can start to build on. So now we're able to move around, where those taps are, I suppose. And so we can start to get the hot water where we kind of need it, not to just where it was plumbed.
And for the uninitiated, so UX is an acronym in tech that actually means user experience.
User experience, that's the one, yeah. And you know it when it doesn't work, right? When you got to open a door and it opens halfway and bangs into a wall, like that's an example. So it's that sort of stuff.
And some of the excitement around the software that you guys are building in medicine is because user experience in medical software has always really sucked. And I don't know why that is, but for whatever reason, there hasn't been a "don't make me think" lens put on medical software. In fact, it's been the opposite. And I think you said before, Bolts, about the amount of times that medical software actually makes the job harder for clinicians. The documentation takes longer, and you end up burdened and spending more time talking to the software system than you do speaking to the patient. I mean, it's a common complaint. If you go and see a doctor, face is in the computer rather than talking to you. That's changing, and the excitement that I have is like we happen to be in a position to be able to influence it, adapt it, and give that user experience to our members. That's really exciting.
I think a lot of that has actually come from what you were just talking about earlier, that unrelenting focus in that middle of house and the promise. And so getting that bit right, because I think it's compliance often drives an outcome that can be not as easy for those users. You think about any system, banks that make you fill in 67 forms and you've got to sign everything 16 different times. It's a similar thing, like that compliance, almost fear to some extent, means that gets really hard. But because of that focus, I think that Fresh Clinics has put into that middle of house, now we're starting to unlock and see that kind of change in that UX user experience space, I think. So yeah, I think it's an exciting place to be.
So, Loz, we've got now our recurring segment,
Recently introduced.
recently introduced member questions. We'll have to get a snappier name, I think.
Like a theme song intro for it.
That's a great idea.
AI generated theme song.
So there's 3 member questions here that we've consolidated, and it's mostly about features. And we spoke about during this conversation that what a member sees on the app is the endpoint of a whole lot of effort and work, and a lot of that stuff is foundations and plumbing and piping and wiring and so on that you might not necessarily see and perceive. But most of these questions are feature-based stuff that is pretty reasonable, right? The pleasing thing is, we can't talk too much about concrete plans for the future, but we can, give a strong indication. All this stuff is stuff we're thinking about, and to some extent, stuff we've already started working on. So we encourage that member feedback. Please keep letting us know what you see, what you think, what you want. Pleasingly, a lot of the time we're thinking the same thing because we're in market too. We're part of the same industry, right? So it's not like we're divorced from the industry and we're actually an app that works for yoga studios and we're just trying to fit it into cosmetic clinics. Like this is our space, this is where we work. And so we often see the same things you guys do. So one of the questions was, any plans to have a patient app where they can have their treatment plans, reminders and so on? And Dave Bolts, do you want to comment on that? Like, is there a way that we could have a portal that a patient could participate in?
Already for our Fresh Health offering, which I'm sure everyone's heard about, we have the nascent beginning of a patient portal, and having that foundation and being able to build on that is the start of, okay, well, what do you want to see next? So I feel like that's the sort of thing where we will get into that. Okay, what would you like? What would be good for the patient?
I'm going to ask you to tell a story, and I think it's your story about the skateboard versus the car. Is that your story?
I know the
around
one.
product development. Well, maybe I'll tell. I'll stop. I won't torture you, but it's in technology. It can be tempting to want to build a car, and you spend all your time deciding: do I want leather seats? Do I want a cup holder and whatever? But when you say the nascent patient portal, I'm reminded that like actually you can just build a skateboard to start with, something simple, get you from A to B, and then you can start working on the increments that get it towards a more luxurious car and more well-appointed features, so on and so on.
That's one of the analogies we use a lot with product development is you don't need to build the car completely. You can start with something simpler. Part of the art of product management, though, as well, is getting that right. And we talked about that, building the Apple-like experience of something and not just chucking something out there, completely. So even while we think through patient portal, it's important to get it right. It's important for our customers that their customers have a good experience, because if their customers don't get the right experience, that doesn't just reflect on us, it reflects on the clinics as well. So absolutely, that's the sort of stuff that we're working on. We want to get it right too.
And patients in clinic, I'd say my guess would be 99 times out of 100 would have no idea who we are. They although they're using our app and they're talking to the doctor and whatever, as far as they're concerned, that's the clinic, the extended part of the clinic, and it's something we take on with pride, right? We form part of the service experience that the clinics who are our members work so hard to create. That extends though to the software, and if there is a patient-facing experience that is in our software, you're right, it reflects the clinic, and we want to make sure that that's done correctly.
I'm going to ask this, and it's pretty much going to be the same answer, but because it's here and it's in caps locks, and a lot of people ask this question, Dave Mack, I'm going to ask you. I think also this question is reflective of our members who are investing in other systems at the moment and to trying to decide, do I invest in a new one? Do I wait? But it says here very clearly, tell us about the booking system. What does the future of sort of that look like?
I mean, yeah, we're not it's not exactly laid out what and when in that sense. But pleasingly, that is something that we're like absolutely exploring really deeply. And again, like I know it feels like you talk about it endlessly, but getting that kind of middle of house and that foundational piece right, so that when you do put a booking system on top of it, it isn't something that's just slapped on. That it's well thought through. That it actually works for the patients, for the clinics. It's actually solving the problem and not adding additional friction and headache for them.
I think what I'm hearing and what I'm resonating with as a non-tech person, it's not my wheelhouse, is you guys are really ensuring that you're completely confident before anything goes out, and that you want that invisible hand, like that's what's sticking out to me, and ensuring that we want to position our offering in the same way that, Apple does. We're not doing it for the sake of doing it and just putting it out there. There's a lot of thought that's going behind to the decisions that you guys are making when it comes to the front of house. Front of house?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's probably a key takeaway for me as well is the conscientiousness with which you're both bringing to that development pipeline, the understanding that it has a real world impact on members, and clunkiness and inefficiency isn't a trivial frustration. It can really make a big difference to someone's workday, to the customer satisfaction and return of patients and all that sort of stuff. So, it's so pleasing that is so deeply ingrained into the innovation culture within Fresh, to ensure that we're working on really high quality, sustainable improvements that are going to meaningfully impact how our members live their day and are able to grow their businesses.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much joining us on the Fresh Pod. I know everyone's really excited about the future of what's ahead, so thank you so much for coming on and explaining it.
Yeah, thanks, guys. And I suppose one extra from me is, if there's a member out there listening and they're saying to themselves, I'd love to be part of an alpha group or a beta tester, or I've got some feedback that I can provide, we'll put out some information on how they can get in touch, where they can subscribe to be part of a list, and so on. Yeah, thanks, guys. Thanks for being part of it.
A pleasure to be here.
Thank you.